There are many common misunderstandings about what constitutes domestic violence. Having a better understanding of what domestic violence is can help you identify if you're experiencing it, or if someone you know is experiencing it. So let's begin today's conversation with a definition. Domestic violence is a pattern of abusive behavior in any relationship that is used by one partner to gain or maintain power and control over another partner. This occurs through a systematic pattern of intimidation, manipulation, humiliation, isolation, fear, terror, coercion, threats, blaming, or injury to the victim. That's a mouthful for sure. Sometimes domestic violence is also referred to as domestic abuse, relationship abuse, or intimate partner violence. Regardless of the term, they all mean abuse that occurs between married couples, cohabitating partners, dating partners, or relatives, and can involve children or siblings. Domestic violence happens to people in all walks of life, regardless of age, gender, sexual orientation, race, religion, education, profession, or socioeconomic status. 1 in 3 women and 1 in 4 men experience some form of domestic violence during their lifetime, either directly as a victim of abuse or by witnessing it as children. If you're currently experiencing it, it's important to realize many other people have gone and are going through the same adversity, and that help is available. We'll talk more about help options later in this video. The most common age that domestic violence first occurs for both women and men is between 18 to 24 years old, although it can be experienced at any age and can be ongoing, even affecting seniors. A frequent misconception is that domestic violence always involves physical bodily harm. Often it does involve physical violence, but it frequently also involves emotional abuse, sexual abuse, economic abuse, and spiritual abuse. Some of these forms of abuse, which involve name-calling, threats, possessiveness, distrust, or countless other tactics, can be more difficult to detect because they don't leave marks, bruises, or broken bones, and because they may be dismissed or downplayed by both the victim and the abuser, as well as those around them, when in fact they are forms of domestic violence. Let's now examine 5 forms of domestic violence. Physical abuse can look like slapping, shoving, grabbing, pinching, biting, hair pulling, hitting, strangulation, beating, or at its most grave, assault with a deadly weapon. Not often talked about in the context of physical abuse is denying a partner medical care or forcing alcohol or drug use upon them. Most people can recognize physical abuse. Emotional abuse doesn't leave visible marks. However, it's just as harmful because it undermines an individual's self-worth or self-esteem, in addition to isolating them from friends, family, and their support system who can help. Sometimes you'll hear emotional abuse called coercive control or psychological abuse. In any event, it's akin to brainwashing through constant verbal criticism, belittling, shaming, guilt trips, name-calling, threats, sarcasm, interrogation, jealousy, trivialization, diminishing one's abilities, nonverbal coercion, harming pets, destroying valuables and property, isolation, or damaging a victim's relationship with his or her children. Sexual abuse is the next form. This involves forcing or pressuring a partner to do something sexually, which can range from unwanted kissing or touching to rape. This may also involve threatening someone in order to manipulate them into performing a sexual act, or pressuring them to allow explicit photos or videos of themselves to be taken that the abuser later uses as leverage to control the survivor. Sexual abuse is also restricting a survivor's access to birth control and condoms, forcing her to become pregnant or have an abortion, or repeatedly using sexual insults to demean a victim. Economic abuse is making or attempting to make an individual financially dependent on their abuser by maintaining total control over financial resources. It can involve forbidding one to work, forcing one to work without pay, controlling how money is spent, putting a partner on an allowance, misuse of someone's personal information to open credit cards, loans, or bank accounts, ruining one's credit, or withholding basic necessities like food, clothing, medication, and housing. Finally, there is spiritual abuse, also known as religious abuse. This includes forbidding a partner from practicing their moral or religious beliefs, or misusing religious scripture to instill fear, guilt, or subservience. This form of abuse may also include manipulating an individual to behave in a certain way, or making them believe abuse is part of a normal relationship and that divorce is not an option. An abuser may also justify abuse through religious scripture or convince the survivor that rewards exist in the afterlife for enduring abuse. If you speak with people who have endured abuse, more often than not, they will tell you their relationship started off well, or their abuser was perfectly charming at the outset of the relationship. Acts that start out as seemingly harmless or even gratifying, like wanting the victim to spend all their time only with them because they love them so much, can morph into abuse. The frequency and intensity of abuse varies. Abusers may apologize profusely for their actions or try to convince a victim they do these things out of love or care, or that they just lost control temporarily. However, power and control almost always intensifies over time, despite any apologies, and often escalates into physical abuse that can become increasingly more violent. It can be difficult to understand why someone abuses someone else. Is it mental illness, anger management issues, life pressures, childhood exposure to domestic violence, or alcohol or drug use that causes someone to abuse? It is not. Instead, abuse is caused by one person's belief that they have the right to control their partner. And try as one may, the odds of an abuser changing or curtailing their behavior are extremely low. Domestic violence not only affects those who are abused, but also family, friends, coworkers, witnesses, and the community. Children that grow up witnessing domestic violence are among those most impacted. The Adverse Childhood Experiences Study, or ACEs, is one of the largest investigations on this topic and has determined that frequent exposure to violence predisposes children to numerous social and physical problems. It teaches children violence is a normal way of life, therefore increasing their risk of becoming society's next generation of victims and abusers. These realities are why it is so important to understand what domestic violence is and what it looks like. It may help someone avoid an abusive partner altogether or identify the signs early enough to terminate a relationship before separation becomes complex. For those struggling with an abuser, the good news is there are a tremendous number of resources available to help you. In fact, there are close to 3,000 domestic violence shelters throughout the US and Canada, covering nearly every imaginable region. You can find the one nearest you at domesticshelters.org. which offers its millions of visitors a year a searchable database of shelters, along with their contact information. Most local shelters offer a 24/7 hotline staffed with advocates who understand what you are going through and how to help. Additionally, there is the National Domestic Violence Hotline, which you can reach at 800-799-7233. You can call 24/7 or use their live chat feature online, both of which are anonymous, to speak with an advocate. There's also a hotline specifically for young people at 866-331-9474. More than 4 million people have called into these two national hotlines, which are free, just like local hotlines. If you're not quite ready to speak with someone and would rather learn about and process what you're going through, there are hundreds of articles, sorted by category, on a wide variety of topics at domesticshelters.org. Articles include how to create a safety plan, how to secure an order of protection, why you should document abuse, how to explain abuse to children, what to do if you have to go to court, how to heal after leaving an abuser, and more potentially life-saving topics. The website also lists recommended books and offers links to a number of self-assessments that can be taken privately to better understand a situation and your level of danger. By the way, as you explore domestic violence further, you'll likely hear the term survivor used in place of what others might refer to as a victim. Survivor is an empowering term domestic violence advocates, people currently experiencing abuse, and people who have successfully moved on from an abuser like to use because of what it implies. Above all, always remember, abuse is never your fault. You do not deserve to be with a partner who makes you feel unsafe or who harms you physically or emotionally. It is also up to you and you alone to decide when the safest time is to leave your abuser and plan your escape.